So recently, IGN made a video talking about how every new PlayStation game that is coming out is usually of the same underlying story. You have Ghost of Yotei, your old Ghost of Tsushima game, The Last of Us, God of War. Basically, IGN's argument is in all these games, the underlying story of the game is basically like a revenge story, and some sort of revenge is involved in all these games. So the whole narrative basically revolves around the fact that when you start off as a character, you are initially wronged in the beginning, and then your whole game is basically like this adventure where you end up discovering yourself in the process of getting revenge for what you have been wrong. Even outside the scope of PlayStation, you have games like Sifu, which was like really popular when it came out. It also had like a TV show episode, also a widely successful game. Again, the whole game was about a revenge narrative. To a point, I do agree with IGN. Like a lot of new games are about like the revenge narrative. But if you think about it, like every major franchise which is like widely popular also has some elements of your protagonist seeking revenge. If you consider just TV shows, like you have Game of Thrones, which I don't have to say, like the whole point throughout the series, there is one entity taking revenge to the other entity. You still juggle between liking and disliking a character. Then you go to like Breaking Bad, again like a revenge story. Yeah, there are like elements of personal revenge, but then like the overarching story of Breaking Bad is Walter White sort of rebelling against the destiny that he has been shown, or his fate. But then you come over to anime, and like some of the real popular animes in the genre right now, something like Attack on Titan, Code Geass, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I know Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is like sort of like on the tamer side, but Demon Slayer, who recently released new movie, all of the really popular media that I just mentioned, all have a theme of revenge. So I feel like there is this fatigue not for revenge stories, but for settings in which these revenges have been taken, and the surrounding characters around which the whole arc of revenge or the whole narrative of revenge is being drawn out in. We don't watch the shows because these shows are like based on revenge, but we watch these shows because there is an underlying story, and the characters that you meet and the characters that you interact with throughout the journey of your protagonist's development also is like a major factor that keeps the audience hooked to whatever media they're consuming. You can have really great stories with the same underlying narrative but have really different themes, like for example Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad. Both are set in two completely different timelines, both have two completely different objectives, both have two completely different protagonists. Like both are set in two completely different worlds that are hugely apart, yet both of these shows are widely popular, and both of these offer a sense of journey, a sense of adventure within the protagonists, or even like the general side characters in the show, because it all sort of coagulates towards this theory called the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is basically like this philosophical theory of a person's entire life cycle of going from being broken to sort of having this self-realization, and basically like a direction towards which a person can move towards, and a basic sense of self with what motivates the character or motivates the person to move forward in their journey. Yeah, you can have really good stories which have really good revenge themes, but if all those stories sort of are set in this ancient mythical lands, that is when you get fatigued, and that is when you sort of have like this disconnect, because you've heard those stories being set in those worlds like a lot of time. Over the last few months, I've also been seeing a lot of people talk about like the souls like fatigue, and I feel like it shares the same problem as well. Like usually with souls like games, these games are set in fantasy worlds, except for like that crab souls like game. I feel like that game was really unique. But if you think about all the really popular souls like games apart from like From Software games, you have these really popular games, but also the underlying thread between all these games that I just mentioned is all of them are set in fantasy worlds. All of them have like a fantasy element to them. But when you consider like the game that I just mentioned, which was like the crab game, which had like the Soulsborne elements, like that's a unique take. So it's not about having or copying the underlying formula. Like if something works, then why fix it? Like You gotta bring some oomph to the formula. You gotta bring that element to the formula that is going to set it apart from like the other competitors or like the other stories that are being told in your same space. If you're someone who's like a gamer or someone who's like a gamer of the Soulsborne series, obviously you're a gamer who is going to be trying out. Obviously, if you're someone who likes the Soulsborne games, like you're also going to be a gamer who's going to be trying out every other game that is congruent to that genre. And usually if you're someone who's played Elden Ring, there's a high probability that you're going to be playing Lies of P, high probability that you'll be playing Black Myth Wukong, because if you've played and liked Elden Ring, you would love to try and stick to the things that you've already established as you've liked that thing. So there is nothing wrong with like copying like an underlying formula. The differentiating element is what makes people talk about your game like 5 years, 10 years ago, and that's how you attain legendary status to whatever property that you're going to be putting out in the real world. So my general consensus or my general take is I feel like people should make more games on the already established formulas. Like you have your Battlefield 6, and like recently Battlefield 6 released, and for a really long time Call of Duty sort of occupied that space of modern Warzone type games. And yeah, you obviously have games like Fortnite and multiple other games like Overwatch, Marvel Rivals. But when it comes to like the modern setting, you just had Call of Duty, and for a really long time that sort of monopolized that space. Once you attain like a monopoly situation, I don't feel like you will have much space to innovate, and I don't think you even think twice about innovating. But when Battlefield 6 came along, like there was so many new things that they like highly improved on like of their previous Battlefield games. Like you had destructible environments, like they made changes to their skill based matchmaking techniques. Like you have all these innovations that were done in a jiffy. So now instead of Call of Duty being like that place in being like at the helm of the throne, they are going to be playing catch up. Again, like live service games are everywhere, from Fortnite to all the way to like Marvel Rivals, even finals. But I feel like if you log behind certain key or any of the gameplay elements of any game behind a paywall, it generally like shoos new people away from like trying to indulge or trying to interact with your property. But I get their general consensus. Like I get what they are sort of thinking. They already have an established player base who are ready to pull out the bucks for whatever they're going to basically produce. So they just seem to cater to those audience. But I feel like if once you generate a certain audience, that audience is like entropy. It continuously keeps reducing, and it is your job as a creator or a property owner to make sure that that pool of people that you have cultivated, or that audience that you've cultivated and like attracted towards, has to be with you for a longer period of time. And the only way to do that is to cater to them and make sure and listen to their feedback, and hopefully create a property that they feel comfortable with and enjoyable for the coming years. I feel like that one game, I feel like that is one example with Call of Duty. And I know I went off on a tangent here, and I initially started talking about revenge narratives and I came to Call of Duty, but you get the gist of it. The modern gaming scene, especially in the last few years, has improved so massively, and there's a lot of new games, a lot of indie games, a lot of different genres of games, and a lot of people at this point of time, no people are like shying away from like one genre to the other. Like if you consider something like Claire Obscure Expedition 33, it's a turn-based fighting game. Like at the base of it, it is a turn-based fighting game. But a lot of people, myself included, I've never even interacted with a turn-based fighting game. Like I've never interacted with a turn-based fighting game, and generally I don't like that genre of game. But when you have something that a lot of people are collectively passionate about and really want others to try out your property, it generally creates a curiosity between like people who initially wouldn't have tried out something like Claire or something like Expedition 33. So it is not about which genre that you're working on, or it is not about what type of story that you're telling. If you can attract those initial few really enthusiastic, really loud mouthed, like really loud, really enthusiastic group of people who are going to tell the rest of the world how good your game is, I think that's job well done from your side. And this property can sort of not only be applied to video games, it can literally be applied to any form of media that you're talking about. So your goal as a creator should be like, I want to attract those few people who are going to make the loudest noise, and the only way you can do that attraction, and the only way you can attract those initial few people is when you make a really good property yourself. Yep, that's been about it. See ya. Yeah, that's been about it. See ya.